The church doors flew open. People poured out into the bright afternoon like a small river. Rice still clung to my suit. Emily's hand was warm in mine. Our friends cheered and someone shouted, "Kiss her again." I laughed, even though my heart was heavy. My parents had not shown up. They had not called. They had not even sent a text to say, "We can't make it." They knew the time. They knew the place. They knew it was my wedding. But the seats I saved for them were empty the whole time. I walked Emily down the steps, and the crowd split. Right at the curb, the car waited. It was fire red, low, and smooth like a slice of lightning. A $158,000 Ferrari. The ribbon on the hood danced in the wind, and the engine breathed in a slow, deep growl, like a big cat about to wake up. Phones came out. People whispered. Some gasped. I could feel the heat from the engine in the air. Then I heard a voice I knew too well. "Jason." I turned. My mother and father stood at the bottom of the steps, both dressed like they had sprinted from another event. My mother's lipstick was perfect. My father's tie was sharp. They weren't there for the vows, the music, or the prayer. But now, when the crowd stared at the red car like it was a movie star, there they were, front row to my life again. My father took a step closer to the Ferrari and ran his fingers across the mirror like it might rub off on him. "Is this yours?" he asked, eyes bright, voice soft and hungry. My mother's smile trembled. "Jason, honey, we tried to come. Traffic was..." She pointed down the road without looking away from the badge on the hood. This is something." The photographer paused. My friends looked from my face to my parents and back. My new wife squeezed my hand. I could feel the old ache, the old boy in me who used to wait by the window for parents who never arrived on time, waking up and stretching his pain. I let out a breath. I opened the car door. The car made a clean click, like a secret being released. "Jason," my father said, putting his palm on the top of the door. "We should talk." A hush fell over the steps. The engine's low rumble felt louder than voices. I slid into the driver's seat and looked up at the man who had taught me to keep quiet when I needed help. My mother leaned in with eyes that glittered with something I couldn't read. Hope, hunger, fear, or maybe all three. Son, my father said, listen. The engine note rose when I pressed the start. A cheer went up from the crowd because the sound was like thunder with a smile. My mother's hand hovered over my shoulder. My father took another step, close enough that the front of the car almost touched his knee. Wait, he said, please. I looked at Emily. She gave me a small nod that said, I trust you. The crowd leaned forward, the moment stretching thin and tight as a string. I put my hand on the gear lever. I could go, I could stay. I could say everything I could say. Nothing. Then a horn blasted from somewhere behind us, and tires screeched up the block. People turned their heads. Someone shouted, Hey, watch it! My father flinched and slipped a half step off the curb. The moment snapped like a twig. Now let me tell you how we got here. I grew up in a small town where the snow came late and left early, where summer smelled like fresh cut grass, and the school roof was a good place to watch fireworks if you knew how to climb. Our house looked perfect on the outside. White fence, clean windows, a flag on the porch. But inside, it was always a little too quiet. Dad was a sales manager who believed feelings were a sign you were not working hard enough. Mom chased fancy brunches and the kind of friends who only used cloth napkins. They were busy polishing their lives like trophies. I was the dusty shelf underneath. I learned early that some people only look at your life when it shines. When I brought home a drawing in first grade, Mom said, That's nice, and dropped it in the junk drawer with the old grocery lists. When I made the baseball team, Dad said, Good. Now go shovel the driveway, like he had been waiting to say it all day. It wasn't cruelty that hurt. It was the thin air of being unseen. But there were people who saw me. Mrs. Henderson from next door always waved like she'd been hoping to see me all morning. She made sweet tea in summer and hot chocolate in winter, and both tasted like kindness. We are all carrying something, she would say, handing me a warm mug. Be gentle. You never know when your gentleness is the only soft thing someone touches all day. I carried that sentence like a smooth stone in my pocket. I learned it wasn't a weak thing to be kind. It was strong. It was choosing again and again to be the person you wish had come for you. In ninth grade, I got a job wiping tables at Benny's Diner. I liked the sound of plates clinking, the way people smiled when their coffee was refilled before they had to ask. Mr. Bennett, the owner, was the kind of man who saw everyone, even the tired mailman and the quiet kid in the corner. "You're a doer," he told me one night when I stayed late to scrub the floor. "Doers go far. Keep your head straight, your heart soft, and your hands busy." I kept my hands busy. I saved my tips in a jar with a cracked blue lid. I bought used tools at garage sales. I watched videos about engines and wiring and the inside of machines. Cars made sense to me. They didn't play games. If you gave them what they needed, they gave it back. No more and no less. I started washing cars in our driveway for $10 each. Then I made a Facebook page on Emily's advice. Before she was my Emily, she was the girl who sat behind me in English and underlined every sentence that mattered. "You have to show people what you can do," she said. "They won't guess." It turns out many people had dirty cars, and few people had the time to make them clean. I went to homes. I went to offices. I brought my buckets and soap and the smile I practiced in the mirror until it was real. I learned names. I remembered birthdays. I left little packets of breath mints on dashboards with a note. "Thanks for trusting me with your ride." My business grew from a single bucket and a dream into a small van and a calendar full of appointments. I did a good job for a good price. I showed up on time. I treated people with care. It was not fancy magic. It was steady kindness. Sometimes I came home late and saw Mom on the couch, scrolling through pictures of parties she attended like they were her work. Dad watched the scoreboard on TV like it owed him money. "You're wasting your weekends," he said, not looking away from the game. "You should be networking." He meant I should be shaking hands with his friends, learning how to like what they liked, and laughing at their jokes, even when they weren't funny. But washing cars taught me more about people than any long lunch in a loud restaurant. I learned who apologized and who expected you to apologize for your own back pain. I learned who tipped and who counted the napkins you used and sighed. I learned that the best customers were not always the richest and that the most thankful ones made you want to do better, even when no one was looking. That is how I met Emily again after high school. I had polished a black SUV so hard I could see a whole other world in it. She walked by with a bag of groceries and a sunburst smile. "You always had good hands," she said, and then blushed so fast we both laughed. We got coffee, then we got more coffee, then we got quiet because we didn't need so many words. She told me love is choosing each other every day like a new sunrise, and I said, I can do that. We were simple and strong together, like a bridge you trust because you walk it every day and it never creaks. When I told my parents we were getting married, my mother said, "Oh." She looked past me to the window, like maybe the mailman had a more exciting announcement. "Where?" she asked. And when I told her, "Our friend's church." Simple and sweet, her mouth twisted like a lemon seed. "You know your Aunt Denise did her reception at the country club. The photos were lovely." My father squinted like the sun was in his eyes. "What date?" he asked, but he said it like a man checking his schedule for a haircut. I told him again. I told him the time, the pastor's name, everything. He nodded and said, "We'll see," which is what he always said when he secretly planned to forget. Emily and I made our lists. We rented chairs. We borrowed lights that made the fellowship hall glow like a small galaxy. Our friends carried boxes and laughed and then laughed more when they saw we put jelly donuts next to the cake because joy is better when it is sticky and sweet. I wrote my parents' names on 2 cards and taped them to front row seats. It felt like a prayer on paper. 2 days before the wedding, Mom texted, "Busy week, might be tough." That was it. No sorry. No, we love you. Just a shrug with letters. I typed a reply a dozen times and erased it a dozen more. I settled on, "It would mean a lot to me if you came." I watched the typing bubbles appear and disappear like they were playing hide and seek. Then nothing. On the wedding morning, the sky was so blue it looked like someone had washed it and hung it to dry. Emily's dress was simple and perfect, like the inside of a pearl. My hands shook when I tied my tie. I told myself it was because I could not believe I got to marry my favorite person, which was true, but also the empty space my parents made inside me felt louder than it had in years. The ceremony was beautiful. The music lifted us. The kids tossed flower petals like joy. When I said my vows, my voice broke. I promised to be gentle even when life got hard. I promised to build a home where the quiet meant peace not a lack of love. I looked to the front row. 2 cards, 2 empty chairs. Mr. Bennet sat behind them with tears in his eyes. Mrs. Henderson squeezed my shoulder after we said, "I do," and whispered, "Love them, but don't chase their shadows." Emily's mom cried and laughed at the same time, which is the best kind of crying. The less extreme parts of the day were the ones I want to hold forever. Cutting the cake with Emily's hand on mine. The way my friends yelled the lyrics to a song from high school and forgot half the words. The way the pastor danced like his shoes were tickled. The light from the windows sliding across the floor like it knew where it was going. But the ache was still a small animal pacing in my chest. You can love your life and still feel sad about the missing pieces. That is also true, and it is okay. We took pictures on the church steps. The photographer said, "Now just the couple, then now the whole gang, then now a fun one." We did silly faces and serious faces and faces that said, "I can't believe we made it." I tried not to look down the street for a car that would not come. When the last photo was taken, I heard the engine of the car I kept quiet from almost everyone. I had not bought it to show. I had bought it because there was a boy inside me who had loved cars like stars. And once in your life, if you can handle it and you do it right, it is okay to give that boy a dream with wheels. I had paid cash after saving hard. After building my company from 1 bucket to 3 crews, after working nights and early mornings, after fixing other people's dreams with soap and care while keeping my own in a jar like a firefly. I did not owe the world an explanation, and I did not want to throw it in anyone's face. But I wanted to drive away with my wife in something that said, "We've built this. We are not accidents. We are choices." I had planned to pull up, wave, and glide away to our small cabin by the lake that smelled like pine needles and new chances. I had not planned for my parents to arrive at that exact second. I had not planned for the hunger in their eyes. I had not planned for my heart to fold upon itself the way paper folds when you are trying to make a plane that really flies. Back at the curb, I sat behind the wheel. The leather was smooth. The steering wheel was warm from the sun. My father's hand rested on the door like he owned it. My mother leaned in with that smile she used at parties, the one that got her what she wanted without ever asking out loud. "Jason," she said. "Sweetheart." It sounded strange, like a nickname from a book she had not read for years. "Can we talk?" my father asked again, like the first words had never left his mouth. I looked up through the windshield and saw all the faces, friends who had wrapped lights for us, friends who had bought second-hand vases and scrubbed them until they shone, friends who had stood when my parents stayed sitting, who had clapped when my parents stayed silent. I saw Mir Bennett with his hands in his pockets, like he did when he was holding himself back from doing too much. I saw Mrs. Henderson's eyes soft and ready. I thought about what kindness means when old hurt knocks on your door. Kindness is not saying yes to everything. Kindness is telling the truth without trying to bruise. Kindness is drawing lines in the sand and saying, "I love you, and I will not let you walk on me anymore." Kindness is also leaving room for change, even if you don't see it yet. I took my hand off the gear lever. I set it on my heart, then on the wheel. I opened my mouth to speak. That is when the horn blasted from behind us. A delivery truck rolled up too fast, trying to beat the light, and stopped hard. Its bumper kissed the crosswalk line. People scattered like birds. The sound bounced off the brick buildings and came back angry. My father jerked, his knee bumping the bumper, and he stepped one more foot into the street without looking. "Dad," I shouted. He froze, eyes wide, one hand braced on my hood, like it could hold the world still. The truck driver threw up his hands. "Move," he yelled out the window. "Get out of the road." My mother reached for my father's arm but grabbed air. Her heel slipped on a handful of rice on the curb. She pinwheeled one arm and caught the side mirror of the Ferrari to steady herself. The mirror bent, and for a second, everything felt slow, like the whole day was underwater. I slammed my foot on the brake, though the car was already stopped. The engine roared as if it wanted to jump in front of me and fight. Emily's hand gripped my shoulder. "Jason," she said, her voice calm but tight. "It's okay. Just breathe." Then my father did something he had never done. In front of me, he looked afraid, not angry, not annoyed, not cold. Afraid. His mouth opened like the word help wanted to come out but didn't know the way. The truck driver leaned on his horn again. Somewhere down the block a siren answered, bored at first, then nearer. My father stepped back too fast. His heel catching the edge of the curb, he stumbled, arms thrown out to catch balance. His hand slapped the hood again, fingers spread, and left a print that looked like the mark a kid would make in cement to prove he existed. He swallowed, then he looked at me, into me, like just then he was seeing the boy at the window. The teen with the buckets, the man in the suit. My mother's breathing came short and sharp, her eyes flicking from the badge on the hood to my face and back, like she could not pick which truth to look at. Please, my father said, his voice cracking. He never let his voice crack. Don't go, not yet. I held his eyes. A whole slideshow of old scenes ran behind them. Missed games, forgotten birthdays. The time I stood at the curb in the snow in new shoes I bought for myself, waiting for a ride that never came. The time he said, "We'll see," and I sat with my bag packed until the night got tired of me. I felt the old anger. I felt the new peace I had worked hard to build over it. I felt my wife's hand steady on my shoulder like a lighthouse that does not shout but saves you anyway. I took a breath, deep and steady. I was ready to answer in a way that told the truth and kept my heart clean. I was ready to be kind without letting them name my life. I was ready to say the sentence that had been growing in me since I was a boy. I love you, but I will not chase you. I put 2 fingers on the window switch, and that is when my mother blurted, too loud and too fast, a half sentence that hit the air like a spark near dry leaves. Jason, we didn't come because... She stopped. Her face changed. She looked at my father, then at the people, then at the phones. She swallowed the rest of the words like a stone. The siren was close now. The truck driver shouted one more time. My father lifted his hand from the hood, then pressed it to his chest, just for a second, the way you do when you feel something heavy and you're not sure if it is outside you or inside. His eyes flicked down the street. His jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to speak. Before he could, a new sound tore through the moment. A quick scream from the top of the steps behind us. Everyone turned at once. A little boy, running with a paper airplane, lost his footing and tumbled forward. He rolled 2 steps, then 3, arms flailing, headed for the last steep drop to the sidewalk. Everything in me moved. The world narrowed. The old boy inside me and the man I had become reached for the same thing. I shoved the door open. The edge of the door caught my father in the shin. He stumbled back with a grunt, but I didn't have time to say sorry. I was already out of the car, already taking the steps 2 at a time, already diving toward the kid with my arms out like a net. The crowd gasped. The truck driver stopped honking. Emily's voice cut through the noise, clear and steady. Jason. My hands closed around the boy's waist, just as his foot missed the last step. We spun and hit the sidewalk on our sides. My shoulder burned. The boy's paper airplane fluttered down and landed on my chest. It was blue and bent, and it had "To Uncle Mark" written on the wing in shaky marker. The kid blinked at me. Then he smiled like kids do when they were scared and then they weren't. "Thanks," he said, breathless. He hugged my neck quick and tight, then scurried up to the woman who ran toward us, crying, "Evan, Evan," over and over. She pulled him into her arms and kissed his hair and looked at me like I had pulled a star down and put it in her pocket. "You okay?" I asked the boy, rubbing his back. He nodded. I stood slowly, shoulder sore, suit dusty. People clapped without meaning to. It was the kind of clap that comes out when relief rushes through a crowd like a big wave and leaves everyone wet and laughing. I looked up. My father stood on the curb with his mouth open. My mother's hand was still on the mirror like she couldn't let go. I dusted my sleeve and walked back to the car. Emily met me halfway and touched my cheek like I was made of something worth touching. The boy waved his bent plane at me and yelled, "Nice car!" And everybody laughed because kids tell the simple truth with no brakes on it. I stopped at the hood. The handprint my father left was still there, a little dusty, a little oily, like a word without letters. I ran my fingers over it, then looked up at him. We were back where we started, but nothing was the same. My father lowered his hand from his chest. He took a breath, then another, like he was trying to find the right key to open a door that had never opened for him before. My mother stepped forward, her mouth set, her eyes wet, and said, "Jason, there's something you need to." A police car slid up behind the truck with a soft whoop of its siren and stopped at an angle. The officer stepped out, looked at the scene, looked at the red car, looked at my parents in the road, and said, "Folks, let's clear the lane." The moment, already thin, pulled tighter, ready to snap or sing. I lifted my hand toward the officer to say, "1 second," and then turned back to my parents to finally speak. But before I could, a silver SUV rolled to a stop behind the police car. The passenger door opened fast. Someone I had not seen in years stepped out, eyes locked on me like a magnet had pulled them. She shut the door with the soft thud of a secret being kept too long and started toward us with a face full of urgency and news. "Jason," she called. "Wait, don't go. You need to know." The crowd went quiet again. Emily's hand found mine. My father took a step back. My mother's eyes widened like she had seen a ghost made of consequences. I looked at the woman coming down the sidewalk, my heart punching hard, because if she was here, then everything was about to twist. The airplane on the hood flipped in a small wind and pointed at the church like a sign from a kid prophet. I opened my mouth, and that is where we will pause for now. Quick one before we continue. Where are you watching from? The woman rushing toward me had that look people get when they're carrying both fear and truth at the same time. She was tall, with wavy blonde hair, a dark blazer over jeans, and eyes that cut through the crowd like she was looking for me in a burning room. Emily's hand tightened around mine. The woman stopped in front of us, breathing hard. "Jason," she said. "I tried calling. You didn't answer." I frowned. "Do I know you?" Before she could reply, my mother stepped forward quickly. "Jason, let's not do this here." Her voice shook in a way I had never heard before. "Please." The woman looked straight at her. "No, Linda, you've kept this hidden long enough." People murmured. My father's face went pale, then red, then pale again. Emily looked at me, confused. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice low but tight. The woman swallowed. "I'm your sister." The crowd gasped. Cameras lifted, Even the officer froze with his notebook halfway out of his pocket. My what? I said. Your half-sister, she said quickly. Dad, she nodded toward him, had me before you. Mom knew. They just never told you. I turned toward my parents. Is that true? Neither spoke. My mother's lips trembled. My father stared at the ground. The woman, no, the stranger, kept talking, her words tumbling out. I came to the wedding. I was in the back. I didn't want to ruin it. But when I saw them pretending like everything was perfect, I couldn't stand it. You deserve to know who you really are, Jason. You deserved better than secrets. Emily took a step closer to me, whispering, Baby, breathe. The air around us felt heavy. For a moment, I didn't hear the crowd, the cars, the sirens, or the music still leaking faintly from the church speakers. I only heard the sound of my own heartbeat. So, all those years of silence, all those moments when my parents pulled away when things got real, it wasn't just pride or coldness. It was guilt, a long, hidden guilt. My father finally lifted his head. Jason, he said softly, we didn't tell you because... Because what? I snapped, my voice shaking. Because you were ashamed of me? Or because I was the only reminder of your mistake you couldn't bury? Jason, please, my mother cried. It wasn't like that. Then tell me how it was. Her voice broke. You were supposed to be our new start, but your father... She glanced at him, then at the woman. He never told me about her until after we were married. By then, she was a toddler. I didn't know how to handle it. I wanted a perfect life. I thought if we focused on you, it would erase the rest. I laughed bitterly. Erase? You erased me too, Mom. Every time I needed you and you didn't show up. Every time I begged for your attention and you said because you were too busy. Emily's hand stayed firm on my arm, grounding me. The officer cleared his throat softly, trying to control the scene, but even he seemed curious about how this would unfold. The woman, my half-sister, stepped forward again, pulling something from her bag. It was an old, folded photo. She handed it to me. In it, a man who looked younger, but unmistakably my father, was holding a baby with the same hazel eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. The baby's blanket had Lydia written on it in blue ink. "That's me," she said quietly. "You were born 3 years after this." The world seemed to tilt. I stared at the picture until the lines blurred. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or laugh. The people around us began to whisper again. This was better than any wedding drama they had ever seen. But I didn't care. Emily guided me toward the Ferrari. "Let's go," she whispered. "You don't owe anyone here an explanation. Not now." I nodded slowly and started to open the car door when Lydia spoke again. "Wait, there's more." I froze. "What more could there possibly be?" I said, my patience thinning. She took a deep breath. "Mom," she glanced at Linda again, "wasn't supposed to know where I lived. But a few years ago, she did find me. She came to me crying. She said you were struggling, that your business was collapsing, that you'd made bad decisions. She begged me not to contact you because she said it would make things worse." My head snapped toward my mother. "You said what?" Her face crumpled. "I was scared, Jason. You were working too hard. I thought if she came into your life, you'd get distracted." "You mean you didn't want her to tell me the truth?" I interrupted. "You didn't want the lie to crumble." "I wanted to protect our family," she said weakly. "Family?" I echoed. "You don't get to say that word right now." My father stepped forward. "Enough, all of you." His voice boomed like thunder. "This is not the place for this conversation." I turned to him, anger and sadness wrestling in my chest. "You had 30 years to make it the right time. You just never cared to." For a moment, no one spoke. Even the birds on the nearby wire went silent. Then Lydia said softly, "You have every right to hate us. But please, don't hate yourself. You built something amazing. You turned pain into power. You're not the mistake they were hiding. You're the proof people can rise above it." Her words hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened. I looked at Emily, whose eyes were full of tears but also pride. Then back at Lydia, who seemed both terrified and relieved. The crowd slowly started to disperse as the officer motioned them to move along. But the core of us, the broken family at the center of it all, stood frozen like statues. I wanted to leave. I wanted to drive away, vanish into the clean sound of the Ferrari's engine, and let the past crumble in the rearview mirror. But some small part of me, The boy who once waited for parents who never showed up still wanted to understand why. Lydia, I said finally, if what you're saying is true, then why come now? She looked down at the ground. Because I got a call last week from Dad. I turned sharply. What? She nodded. He said he wanted to fix things with you before it was too late, that he was tired of pretending. He asked me to show up at the wedding, but I didn't expect to see them already here pretending everything was normal. I looked at my father. His lips were tight, his jaw trembling slightly. I called her, he admitted. I wanted to surprise you after the ceremony. I thought it could be a start. Then why didn't you tell me you were coming at all? I asked. He sighed. Because I wasn't sure I could face you, Jason. Not after all I've done. There it was, the first real confession I'd ever heard from his mouth. No excuses, no half-truths, just raw regret. My anger softened slightly, though it still burned. Emily touched my shoulder. Sometimes broken people try to fix things too late, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah, but at least he's trying to fix it. For a moment, everything went quiet again. The sunlight hit the Ferrari's hood and reflected in my father's eyes. Maybe it wasn't pride this time. Maybe it was shame. Or maybe it was the first spark of understanding. Jason, he said softly, you've become more than I ever dreamed. I was wrong not to see it. And if there's any chance, anyway, he didn't get to finish, because right then, the sharp screech of tires tore through the air. Everyone turned their heads. A black car had swerved around the corner, its tires smoking, coming fast toward the church steps. The driver looked panicked, fighting the wheel. The sound was thunderous. The smell of burnt rubber filled the air. People screamed. The officer shouted, "Move! Get back!" Emily clutched my arm. My father's eyes went wide. My mother's mouth dropped open. Lydia dove to the side. And before I could even think, before I could process anything, the black car spun toward the Ferrari, metal screaming against concrete, its front end aiming right at us. Emily yelled my name. I shoved her backward with all my strength as the car's headlights flashed too close. The crash came a second later, a deafening, heart-stopping explosion of sound and glass and fire. The world went white, then black, then nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the ground. The air smelled like smoke and fuel. People were shouting, my head rang, my vision swam, then cleared. The Ferrari was crushed on one side, flames licking its hood. The black car was sideways, its door flung open. The driver was motionless. Emily was on her knees, crying and shouting my name. I tried to move, but my chest ached. My arms stung. Then I heard my mother's voice scream, "Mark!" I turned weakly toward the sound. My father was on the ground, bleeding from a cut on his head. He had pushed me away at the last second, shielding most of the impact with his own body. For the first time in my life, I saw him truly broken, not angry, not proud, not distant, just human. I crawled toward him, ignoring the pain. "Dad!" His eyes fluttered open. "Jason." Tears blurred my vision. "Why did you do that?" He gave a weak smile. "Guess it's my turn to show up." I gripped his hand tightly, shaking. "Don't you dare die on me now. Not when we finally started talking." He coughed, then chuckled weakly. "I'm not going anywhere, son. Not again." Sirens wailed in the distance. Emily's arms wrapped around my shoulders, trembling. My mother knelt beside Dad, sobbing uncontrollably. Lydia stood back, tears streaming down her cheeks. The crowd, our accidental audience, watched in stunned silence. As the ambulance pulled up and paramedics rushed forward, I looked at my father, my mother, my sister, and the wreckage of everything that had once divided us. And I realized something. Sometimes it takes a crash, not just of cars, but of pride and pain, for people to finally see what truly matters. But I also knew this wasn't the end. It couldn't be, because what came after, the hospital, the truth, the forgiveness, and what I'd learned next, would shake everything again. The hospital smelled like clean sheets, medicine, and quiet prayers. Machines beeped softly in rhythm, like heartbeats whispering secrets to the walls. I sat beside my father's bed, holding his hand, the same hand that had once built fences and shut doors, now wrapped in white bandages and trembling slightly. The doctors said he'd live. "He's lucky," one of them told me. A few more seconds, and the impact could have been fatal. I nodded, but didn't know how to feel. Lucky wasn't a word I'd used for my father before. Emily sat beside me, her arm draped around my shoulder. My mother sat on the other side of the bed, her mascara streaked, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles were white. Lydia stood by the door, watching everything like she wasn't sure if she belonged there. For hours, no one spoke. The only sounds were the machines, the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes, and the rain starting to tap gently against the window. Finally, my father stirred. His eyes opened slowly. When he saw me, he gave a weak smile. "Still here," he whispered. "Yeah," I said, trying to smile back. "Still here." He swallowed hard. "Did I hit the car?" I glanced toward the window where the storm painted everything gray. "The Ferrari?" I asked softly. He nodded. "It's gone," I said simply. "Totaled." He sighed and looked away. "I'm sorry," I frowned. "For the car?" "For everything." That was the first time in my life I had heard my father say those words. They didn't come with excuses or with a heavy sigh that said he wished I'd drop it. They came like rain after a drought, quiet but real. I spent so many years trying to look successful, he continued, his voice hoarse. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what real success is. It's not cars or suits or parties. It's people. It's family. It's love. I stared at him, not trusting my voice. He turned his eyes toward my mother. "Linda," he said softly, "we failed him, both of us." Tears ran down her cheeks. "I know," she whispered. "I just didn't know how to fix it. Every time I looked at him, I saw the mistakes we made. So I tried to act like they didn't exist. You don't fix pain by pretending it's not there," Emily said gently from beside me. My mother looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. "You love him," she said, almost surprised. "I do," Emily said firmly. "Not because of what he has, but because of who he is." Something in my mother's face softened, like a crack finally letting in light. "He's lucky to have you." Emily shook her head. "No, ma'am, I'm lucky to have him." Lydia stepped forward, her voice hesitant but strong. "You all have a second chance," she said. "Not everyone gets that I don't want to stand on the outside anymore. I just want to be part of what's left. My father reached out his uninjured hand toward her. You are part of it, he said. You always were. I swallowed hard. It was strange. This room that had once been filled with so much silence now felt full, not of perfection, but of honesty. After a while, the nurse came in to check his vitals, and I stepped out into the hallway to breathe. The rain had stopped, and the city lights shimmered through the glass like broken stars. Emily followed me, slipping her hand into mine. You okay? She asked softly. I don't know, I said. It's weird. For years, I dreamed of a moment like this, where they'd finally see me, finally care. But now that it's here, I just feel tired. She leaned her head on my shoulder. That's what healing feels like at first. It's heavy before it gets lighter. I nodded. You always know what to say. That's why you married me, she teased with a small smile. I chuckled. Yeah, that and your pancakes. She laughed quietly. I'll make some when we get home. We stood there for a while, letting the silence settle into something peaceful. Then the door creaked open behind us. My mother stepped out, her eyes red but softer than I'd ever seen them. Jason, she said, her voice small, can we talk? I nodded slowly. I was a terrible mother, she said, her voice trembling, and I don't want to make excuses. I thought being strong meant hiding emotions. I thought love was supposed to look perfect. But I was wrong. You were right to be angry. You were right to walk away. I looked at her, unsure what to say. I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued, but I hope you'll let me earn it. I sighed and stepped closer. Mom, I'm angry, yeah, but I'm also tired of being angry. I just want peace. I want us to start over, even if it's from scratch. She reached out her hand, hesitated, and then I took it. It felt like touching something fragile and precious at the same time. Thank you, she whispered. When I went back into the room, my father was asleep again, his breathing steady. Lydia sat by his bedside, humming softly. Emily gave me a small nod as I walked in. That night, I stayed there until the morning sun stretched across the blinds. The city outside began to wake up again. I thought about the wedding that had turned into chaos, the Ferrari that had burned, and the family that had been broken, and how somehow, from all that wreckage, something new was being built. 2 weeks later, my father was discharged. The doctors said he'd need rest, so I brought him to our house by the lake. It was peaceful there, just water, wind, and quiet mornings that smelled like dew. He sat on the porch most days, watching ducks float by, sometimes talking, sometimes not. One morning, as the sun rose, he turned to me. "You know, I looked up the price of that car," he said with a faint smile. $158,000. That's a lot of forgiveness. I laughed. Maybe, but forgiveness is worth more than any car. He nodded. I'm learning that. Emily came out with coffee, and my mother followed with pancakes. Lydia joined us, laughing about something she saw online. For the first time, it didn't feel like pieces trying to fit. It felt like one whole picture, even with its cracks. Later that day, we stood by the lake. The reflection of the sky shimmered on the water like a promise. My father took a deep breath and said, "Jason, I used to think wealth was what you could buy. But now I know it's the people who sit with you when you've lost everything." I smiled. "Then I guess we're all rich now." He chuckled, eyes wet. "Richer than ever." As the sun dipped behind the trees, Emily slipped her hand into mine. "Do you ever regret losing the Ferrari?" she asked. I thought about it. The shine, the power, the symbol it had been. Then I looked at my family, my wife, my parents, my sister, and I smiled. "No," I said quietly, "because I got something much more valuable back." She smiled and leaned her head against me. "And what's that?" "Love," I said simply. "The kind that doesn't run on gas or need a key to start." The water rippled softly as the wind passed, carrying away the last bits of bitterness I didn't know I still had. In the distance, the sound of laughter echoed across the lake. Pure, honest laughter. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, because sometimes life doesn't give you what you want at first. It gives you the pain that teaches you how to value what truly matters. And when you finally rise above it all, the people who once ignored your worth will see you, not for your car, your clothes, or your money, but for your heart. That's the real revenge. Living well, loving fully, and forgiving completely. So, my friend, if you've ever been overlooked, forgotten, or left behind, don't let bitterness drive your story. Keep building, keep being kind. Your time will come, and when it does, the same people who doubted you will have no choice but to remember you existed. Now tell me, where are you watching from?